You know what's funny is I read the manga chapters for this part of the story that mostly dealt with a certain childhood friendship, and then I watched what I thought would be the corresponding anime episode, only to discover that the episode had nothing to do with that flashback, and instead gave us something very, very different that was completely original and honestly hype. So let's get into it because I really want to and need to after being blindsided in the best way. As for what the manga chapters were covering, I'll hold off on deep diving into the meaning of friendship for when I see what the anime did with that storyline, if it ever does. I'm sure it will down the road. It seems too important to just omit, but for now we'll hold off on Baz B and Hashfault and that tragic friendship. Alright, so we left off by getting some new allies, begrudging or otherwise, in this upcoming final battle, and now both Ichigo's group and the rest of the Soul Reapers are making their way to the Royal Palace to face the new Soul King. First off, I loved how the stage was literally set for this, as Yuabaha used his newfound godhood to reshape the palace into something more suited for his own dominion. He literally pulled up the pieces of the Vondenreich headquarters below and used them to give the palace a much more familiar facelift that ended up being like a floating Quincy symbol just to really drive home who the new boss is. And there's something to be said about how he's changing, and some would say tarnishing, something sacred and replacing it with something entirely different. Given the familial tie with the previous Soul King, it feels like a son tearing down the work of his father, trying to improve upon it, but destroying it first. Or if his father really was an unwilling prisoner, and if Yuabaha really did care about freeing him from that, then this could be him destroying the place that kept his father locked away. Whatever the case, it gives us a new setting for the next showdown, and I like it. The anime gives it a very interesting color change. The palette, when you're here, is very like purpley and kind of, it looks very distinct compared to the rest of the series, which the previous battle kind of did too in the anime. You knew exactly what section of the story this was. I think it works fairly well because most of the characters are dressed in black and white. It doesn't wash out as many colors as it would otherwise. I love how we've got multiple groups of Soul Reapers arriving to the Soul King's palace at the same time and in different parts of the area. It gives a nice scope to all of this. It makes it easier to single people out as opposed to if they were all just one massive force. And there are nice character beats going on during these gatherings and these setups. You've got the single-track mindedness of the trio of Quincy survivors that want to go after Yuabaha, and in Baz B's case, Hashfault in particular. They're not there to team up with the Soul Reapers, they're there for good old-fashioned payback, which again, goes back to what I was saying last video. If you're going to have antagonists turn into uneasy allies, you need to make their reasoning make sense, and all of this makes sense to me. They wouldn't straight up join the Soul Reapers, but they would absolutely help them get to the palace if they could do the same for them to fulfill their own plans. They use the Soul Reapers in their quest for vengeance. I don't think I've talked about Yoruichi's brother at all yet, have I? Well, yeah, she has a brother, and he's a pretty fun addition even this late into the game. The concept of what Ichigo and the others would have imagined to be her brother were absolutely hilarious. That was one of the funniest moments. I mean, come on. Outside of that, it's cool to see more of her clan, considering the only other one we've seen was from the OG-13, who I may have mistakenly thought was a lady at the time. And man, did you guys make sure I knew that I made a mistake. But yeah, it's very interesting that Yashiro is being brought in so late into the series, so it's either he's going to play a massive role, or his presence and his character is going to help in our understanding of Yoruichi and bolster her own conclusion. Or maybe a bit of both, I don't know. But I like him, he's fun. You never know with kid characters, you know, when you suddenly throw in a child, suddenly tag along. You never know. It could work, could not. I feel like this does, at least so far. One hilarious and interesting wrinkle in the Soul Reaper forces is that Mayuri and Kenpachi are separated from the rest of the Vanguard, and I can't wait to see how that turns out. They've been my two favorite captains pretty much the whole series, and for extremely different reasons. So I'm excited to see them team up or have to deal with one another because they're so different. So hopefully the dynamic will be a lot of fun. So far so good. I'd hate to be whoever has to face them because they can both be terrifying when they want to be. It wasn't exactly surprising that Ruruka and Yukio are staying behind. Like I said last video, they just aren't built for combat like we're probably going to be getting. But I really enjoyed their two very different reactions to being told that they're not going to be coming along the rest of the way. Yukio, stereotypical gamer boy that he is, was fine staying behind and not actually taking part in any of the action, while Ruruka was a bit upset to be told not to go. But it was really wholesome seeing her and Ichigo's interaction. It's apparent that her crush on him is still absolutely there, but the whole thing was just sweet. I liked it a lot. I don't know if this is all we're going to be getting from them. Maybe they'll come help them get out at some point, but if this is it, it was a nice surprising little role that helped our more major characters along their way. A nice callback to a specific part of the journey that we've taken. Now let's get those other Fullbringers back. Please and thanks. This led to a nice little moment with Ganju as well when he tells Ichigo that he's grown up, but then reconsiders that maybe Ichigo's always been the kind of guy that cares for people like this. And to me, it just seems like Ganju apparently knows Ichigo better now, and I loved that. Remember when Ichigo and Ganju didn't like each other? I could say that about a lot of people in this video, honestly. Remember when they didn't get along with Ichigo? But seriously, this is who Ichigo has been since chapter 1, and while he's grown in various ways, his core has always remained pretty consistently the same as a caring protector, and is one of the reasons that he's just such a great character to root for and follow in this story. Question though, did the Soul Reapers bring Aizen through the gate? I didn't see him, and I'd imagine they'd have to be carrying his chair around, you know? It just seems a little risky that you brought him out of his cell, and I don't know who's keeping an eye on him or where he's at, but he makes me nervous enough to notice. I guess if no one gets close and they just leave him sitting there, they could be fine, since his spirit pressure only reaches so far. The chair is like 100% effective at what it's meant to do though, by the way, as designed by Mayuri, who continues to be this arc's MVP and a huge help to the Soul Reapers. But yeah, it makes me nervous that Aizen kind of just vanished from sight. They must have left him behind, right? While I would be nervous if they did bring him, did Shunsui really only free him to help in that specific moment back at the Sarate? Maybe they've got a plan, but it feels odd that no one's talking about where he's at. He's all of a sudden just gone from the story. Some of the other previous villains are very visible on the front lines though. I said when he first came back how much I loved that Grimmjow is still so unapologetically Grimmjow, and that continues here. He has never ever been a team player and tends to run ahead and leap into action, and that hasn't changed. Him just charging straight for Nclavar was hilarious and very in character. I said in my prediction that Grimmjow was gonna Grimmjow, and he absolutely Grimmjows. You can have him come along for the fight, but he is not going to stick to the playbook whatsoever, and as always with Grimmjow, that leads him into some hot water. Would I have loved to see him be badass and do something awesome? Sure, absolutely, and we still could, but this is just so on brand for him, and I love it. That's what this character is. Nclavar is one of the funniest characters in the series, by the way. He's one of those that's quickly rising in the ranks in my head because of just how fun he is, and how sneaky he is. He relies more on being duplicitous and getting people to underestimate him than any actual, fighting prowess. Sure, he ran away. A lot. But he used that to his advantage and brought down Grimmjow with very little actual effort. That was so good and so clever, and if he's going to be Ichigo's next fight, like it looks like he is, I'm excited to see how Ichigo's going to deal with that kind of opponent. That's so unlike the type of people he usually fights. And we also have Gerard Valkyrie doing his best Roanoa Zoro impression by being completely and utterly lost, desperately looking for anyone to fight him. I loved that so much, and I hope he finds someone worthy. I'm hoping for Chad. But this is when things took a big divergence, as we had Renji and Uryu come into conflict with one another and engage in a full-on fight, which isn't something that happened in the manga, and I've been told never does. This is an anime-only confrontation, which was shocking considering how it ends, but we'll get there. The idea of Renji and Uryu facing off is an exciting one. It's kind of a little bit of a rematch in a way if we think way back back to the first time we saw Renji, where Renji took Uryu down. So they got off to a pretty rocky start, but we also can't forget their amazing team up against Xyloporo back in the Arankar arc. That was such a fun combination of personalities, forcing these two rivals to work together and take on an opponent together. And sure, they didn't end up finishing off Xyloporo, but there was a lot of great interactions between them back then, and it was just fun, you know, to see two of Ichigo's friends, but who aren't friends with each other, have to work together was good. And beyond that, I just like that it's two early rivals of Ichigo that each represented a particular group in a way. Renji was one of the first Soul Reapers we got to meet outside of Rukia and Ichigo. He was the one that introduced the importance and the power of Zanpakuto names. So for a little bit, he was kind of the quintessential early example of a Soul Reaper, while Uryu was the same for the Quincy's, the introductory character that brought in that whole concept, that really solidified what that meant. So to see these two face off just gave me chills, because it was like, wow, yeah, these two haven't had that much. There's been enough for there to be a cool undertone throughout this fight. And it's interesting timing, because Renji's coming off of a big win and some major hype with his post-training skills with the improved Bankai, and Uryu has also just recently shown off his Vollständisch, and now we get to see it again. As for the fight itself, some of the choreography was so awesome. Renji deflecting the arrow with his foot was amazing. Zabimaru hitting Uryu with a block of debris and then bodying him was amazing. Seeing the two of them show each other their new abilities and what that meant and how they clashed, and getting to see more of Uryu's Vollständisch in action, which again is an anime only thing, like stripping the monkey arm of Zabimaru of its flesh with so many arrows, was crazy. The whole thing, you felt the power, you felt the impact, you could see how far both of these characters have come. I just feel like, I know the Renji fight was in the manga, but it feels like this was the anime's way of making sure that both of these characters don't fall into the background, that they get a moment to show how far they've come, how much they've grown. We're getting towards the end of the series, let's see them have more of a chance to show their power. It was a great fight, like it was so exciting and shocking because I wasn't expecting it at all. I also love how we get a little bit of focus on how these two relate to Ichigo, with Uryu now believing that Ichigo has made Renji soft and made him hesitate to kill, and that was a really interesting perspective and perhaps not entirely incorrect. Of these two, Renji did start off as the more hostile and aggressive one. Uryu definitely wasn't a friend at first, and he had his own goals and his own way of doing things, but he wasn't the same kind of enemy to Ichigo that Renji was, and yet now Renji is the one that has stuck by Ichigo and never turned his back on him, while Uryu has seemingly completely betrayed him. Considering how much impact Ichigo has had on changing both of these men's initial beliefs and their philosophies and turn them into friends, it was nice to see that be touched on, because that has been such a major part of both of their developments, is their relationship with Ichigo and how that kind of turned them around. And as far as Uryu's belief that Renji has gone soft because of Ichigo, there was some projection going on, if you ask me. Ichigo was the one that got Uryu to go against the Quincy teachings sometimes, to find loopholes and to choose friendship over those creeds and those ancient feuds, so I think he was projecting. And then the way it ended was just completely out of the blue, because we see what seems like Renji defeat Uryu, and then there's the great moment where Uryu pulls in all the spirit energy and then takes away Renji's, which was crazy to see. It's interesting to see Uryu in action, because the manga pretty much has completely omitted any of his fights, any of his feats. But Renji still tries so hard, which is so in character, only for Uryu to apparently deal him a killing blow, just like he apparently dealt to Ichigo. Was wild. Do I think that Uryu just killed Renji? No, of course not. Not only because this is an anime-only sequence, but also because, if anything, I think this scene just helps cement what I already believe about Uryu, that this is yet another example of him trying to convince his teammates that he's one of them, he's on their side, he's against the Soul Reapers. This, along with the previous Ichigo fight's conclusion to me, is the anime continuously trying to weave in more and more layers to what's going on with Uryu, but it all feels like it shares this overcompensation, because we keep making sure that we're showing that he's being watched. Hoshvault was watching him. In the previous fight, Leash Barrow was watching him at times. He's making sure that he's putting on a show, and that's what it feels like. It all just feels like it's Uryu showing off, really, and trying to make a statement. But yeah, it's interesting because Renji in the anime right now is shot and maybe dead. Definitely not, but he, that's the way they leave us on this, oh my god, he just got shot through the chest. While in the manga, he's running around with the rest of the Soul Reapers still, so it's an interesting divergence, and I'm excited to see how they add this in. Are they gonna bring him back to where I assume he eventually comes with the rest of the Soul Reapers in the manga? Is it gonna circle back around? I just feel like that's why this was done, was that this was just more for Uryu's benefit than Renji, outside of showing him be pretty awesome again. But if that's the case, this wasn't like just a filler fight, it doesn't feel like just padding, because it's adding to what the anime continues to add to Uryu's character, which is more and more convincing that he's a bad guy now, that he's an enemy, but I don't believe it, and I don't think I'm supposed to. This feels like he's putting on an act, and I think he is, and I maintain that. I don't think this is legitimate. I just think they're trying to give more examples to try to paint that picture, that to make the characters believe he's an enemy while giving us more opportunities to question it. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm questioning Uryu. But yeah, this fight was amazing. I loved that it was these two in particular. So good, so surprising. While I would have loved to have seen the friend flashback be animated, this was a great addition, and I'm okay if I have to wait. We'll see where we go from here, but yeah, loved it. Loved this so much. And I'm excited to see what else is going to be added, because if this can be added, who knows what else can be added. We keep getting Uryu fights in the anime, and I hope we keep getting Uryu fights in the anime because he deserves these moments. Yeah, great stuff. That'll do it. I'm just pretty stunned, but I'm very satisfied and happy as a fan of both of these characters that they got this moment to shine a little extra. As always, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please comment, like, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, please join the Patreon. We got hours and hours of manga read-along, anime reactions over there. So please join over there if you want. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.